In a galaxy fractured by centuries of war, where empires rose and fell like tides, there was a fragile hope: peace. It was fragile because the universe had long forgotten mercy, civilizations had grown accustomed to bloodshed, and treaties were little more than temporary reprieves before the next inevitable conflict. She was a diplomat, a member of a species known for their intellect, grace, and unshakable logic. Her life had been devoted to negotiation, to words and reason, to the delicate dance of diplomacy that kept her people alive. And now, she had been tasked with the most delicate mission of all: securing peace with a species known for chaos, unpredictability, and brute resilience, a species called humans. He was one of them. To her, humans were fragile, impulsive, reckless even. They were primitive, with short lifespans and limited physical endurance, yet they carried an unexplainable spark. Some called it stubbornness, others, courage, but she would come to learn that it was far more powerful than either, a force that could change the course of galaxies. The Council had arranged a union, a marriage meant purely to seal an alliance. She trusted him because it was her duty, because peace demanded it, and because she had little choice. Love, desire, or connection mattered little in the cold calculus of survival. Yet from the moment she met him, she felt something she could not name: a quiet curiosity, a flicker of anticipation that perhaps this human was not as ordinary as he seemed. The first weeks were deceptively calm. She observed him in training simulations designed to prepare him for combat scenarios, and she expected mediocrity, perhaps a few flashes of skill. What she witnessed instead shook her understanding. He moved with a precision that was instinctive, effortless, and yet terrifyingly controlled. Where others would falter, he adapted. Where strategies failed, he improvised. His movements were not chaotic. They were exact, lethal, and beautiful in their efficiency. It was in one such training session that the first glimpse of his extraordinary power became undeniable. A simulated enemy squad attacked. He faced them alone, unarmed at first, yet every step he took, every dodge, every strike, displayed an uncanny mastery of combat. By the end, the simulation that had been designed to challenge him was utterly dismantled, and yet he did not boast. He did not smile. He simply stood calm, composed, as though nothing extraordinary had occurred. Her admiration was tempered by fear. Humans were mortal, fragile, and unpredictable. To trust one in battle was to gamble with fate itself. But as days turned into weeks, she realized that his strength was not just physical. It was something deeper: resilience, adaptability, courage, and the refusal to yield no matter the odds. Then the war escalated. Treaties shattered, borders burned, and fleets clashed across star systems. And she who had married him for peace found herself witnessing something beyond comprehension. The humans' enemies were formidable: towering alien warriors, armies enhanced with lethal technology, and fleets capable of decimating entire planets. Yet he stood at the forefront, calm, decisive, and unstoppable. The first major battle was near a planet she had once visited, a world of oceans and jagged cliffs now scarred by conflict. Enemy forces had landed, confident in their superiority. The human stepped forward unarmored by any legendary aura, yet radiating a presence that drew both allies and enemies into awe. He fought like a god. Every movement was precise, every strike calculated, and every decision made in a fraction of a second. Alien soldiers, armed with advanced weapons and superior strength, fell before him as if caught in a tide they could not resist. Entire squads were routed, their leaders shattered by what could only be described as instinctive genius. And yet, despite the chaos, he retained his humanity. He saved those who could not defend themselves, risked himself to shield allies, and inspired hope even amidst the inferno of war. She watched, heart pounding, as he turned the tide of battle single-handedly. And in that moment, she understood the unthinkable truth. Humans were underestimated because no one could imagine the strength born from mortality, courage, and unyielding will. As battles raged across planets and space, she learned more about him, not just the warrior but the human behind the legend. He laughed softly at her questions, told stories of a world she had never seen, spoke of sunsets, oceans, and the small, beautiful details of life. These moments of normalcy, juxtaposed with his battlefield prowess, made him all the more extraordinary. During the siege of Valtara, The enemy unveiled a weapon capable of annihilating entire cities in a single strike. Entire fleets hesitated, generals debated strategy, and fear threatened to paralyze their forces. Yet he did not hesitate. Alone, or seemingly so, he led a counterattack. Through intuition, skill, and unshakable resolve, he neutralized the threat, saving thousands of lives. She realized then that trusting him had not been a gamble, it had been necessary. Peace was fragile, yes, but through him it became achievable, not through treaties alone, not through negotiation alone, but through courage, determination, and the extraordinary power of one human who refused to surrender. And in the quiet aftermath, as the battlefield smoldered and survivors tended to their wounded, she finally allowed herself to admit the truth she had hidden. Admiration had deepened into something more profound. Respect had become trust, trust had become awe, and awe had become something she could only describe as connection. He turned to her, exhaustion etched into every line of his face, yet his eyes shone with clarity. "We did it," he said quietly. "Not alone, but together. That's what humans do. We fight, and sometimes we change everything." She nodded, feeling the weight of every battle, every life saved, every choice made. "I trusted you," she whispered. "And I've seen what humans are truly capable of. Not just strength, not just skill, but heart." And she knew in that moment that the galaxy had witnessed something extraordinary. One human who had been trusted to secure peace had waged war like a god and reminded the universe of the power of courage, resilience, and humanity. Because sometimes, peace was not won by words or treaties alone. Sometimes it was won by a human who refused to surrender, and by those who had the wisdom to trust them. The war had escalated faster than anyone had anticipated. Entire fleets clashed above shattered planets, leaving trails of fire and debris in their wake. She, the diplomat, had thought her trust in him was a gamble, but she had no idea how right that trust would prove to be. From the moment the first enemy ships appeared, he moved with a calm decisiveness that defied reason. His eyes scanned the battlefield, predicting movements, anticipating attacks, and directing soldiers in a way that made their coordination almost effortless. He fought not recklessly but strategically, turning even overwhelming odds into opportunities. Every strike he made was precise, every action measured, yet executed with an instinctive fluidity that left both friend and foe in awe. She watched from the observation deck as he led a small squad of humans and allies through a city under siege. Explosions shattered buildings, fires spread through streets, and enemy drones scoured the area. And yet he moved through it all like a storm incarnate. Soldiers who had faced countless battles before moved with newfound confidence under his presence, following his commands without hesitation. It was during one particularly harrowing skirmish that she realized the true extent of his abilities. Enemy forces had trapped a group of civilians in a collapsing building. The human didn't hesitate. Without orders, without backup, he charged into the inferno. She could see him weaving through debris, dodging falling structures, neutralizing threats faster than the eye could follow. He emerged moments later carrying survivors, their lives saved by a single human who had defied every expectation. But it wasn't only his combat skills that impressed her. It was his humanity, his willingness to risk everything for others, his ability to inspire loyalty and courage in those around him, and the calm, focused determination that never wavered even in the face of impossible odds. She had trusted him for peace, yes, but now she understood something more profound. Humans, though mortal and fragile, carried a strength that no weapon or technology could replicate. The battles continued across multiple fronts. Each time he adapted, learning from the enemy's tactics, predicting their strategies, and countering them in ways that seemed almost supernatural. Entire alien regiments fell before him, their leaders unable to comprehend how one human could outthink and outfight warriors bred for war. Yet despite his growing legend, he remained grounded, human, never succumbing to arrogance or ego during a particularly desperate fight on the ice planet of Vera 9. Enemy forces unleashed a massive siege weapon capable of obliterating entire cities. Fleets faltered, generals hesitated, and panic spread through the ranks. He did not pause. He analyzed the threat, coordinated his allies, and devised a counterattack that neutralized the weapon before it could fire. The survivors he saved would later speak of him not as a soldier, but as a force of nature, a human who wielded power like a god and fought with a heart that could not be broken. She began to see him differently. The man she had trusted for diplomacy was now a figure of awe, a living legend whose courage and skill had shifted the course of the war. And yet she also saw his quiet moments, the moments when he tended to the wounded, shared stories of Earth, or spoke softly to her in a way that reminded her he was still human, still capable of tenderness amidst chaos. She realized then that her trust had been well placed, but it had evolved into something more. Admiration had deepened into respect, and respect had become a bond forged through the fires of war, courage, and shared struggle. He was not just a warrior. He was a symbol, a living testament to the extraordinary nature of humanity in a galaxy that had long underestimated them. As night fell over the war-torn landscapes, she stood beside him, watching the stars. Fires still burned on distant planets, fleets drifted in silent orbit, and the weight of countless lives lost pressed heavily on both of them. And yet, amidst the devastation, she felt hope. The kind of hope that only comes from witnessing courage beyond measure. The kind that can change the fate of worlds. She knew one thing for certain. She had trusted a human for peace, and in return she had seen him wield the power of a god. And in doing so, he had changed everything. The war had reached its peak. Entire star systems were ablaze, fleets colliding in a storm of fire, energy, and metal. Planets she had once studied for their beauty now lay scarred, oceans boiled, and cities in ruin. The Council feared the collapse of alliances, the rise of chaos unchecked, but she knew that he, the human she had trusted for peace, was about to change the course of history. He stood at the forefront of the largest engagement yet. Enemy forces were relentless, a coordinated horde of warriors, machines, and technology designed to crush everything in its path. Yet he faced them calmly, scanning the battlefield with an almost supernatural focus. Every movement, every decision was deliberate. Every strike carried a precision and force that left her in awe. The first wave of enemy assault hit like a tidal wave. Starships collided above the planet, massive explosions lighting the dark void. Ground forces were surrounded, outnumbered, and overwhelmed. She feared for him, but as always, he moved with uncanny clarity, rallying his allies, predicting the enemy's maneuvers, and striking at the exact point that would turn the tide. It was not brute strength alone that made him terrifying. It was the combination of intuition, strategy, and human resilience. Where alien commanders relied on overwhelming numbers and technology, he relied on courage, adaptability, and an unshakable will. Entire battalions were routed by his presence alone, their movements outmatched and outthought by one human warrior. In the midst of battle, she saw a moment that would forever be etched in her memory. A massive siege weapon, capable of obliterating an entire city, had been deployed. Fleets hesitated, generals argued, and chaos threatened to spiral out of control. Without a word, he advanced. Alone, or so it seemed. He navigated through hail of fire, dodged blasts that would have killed dozens, and neutralized the weapon before it could fire. Civilians and soldiers alike watched in disbelief, saved by a human who had turned the impossible into reality. But the climax came when the enemy's ultimate commander appeared, a colossal figure, armed with advanced weaponry and the power to crush entire planets. The human faced him, exhausted but undeterred, and a silence fell across the battlefield. Even the Allied forces paused, sensing the gravity of what was about to unfold. The fight was unlike anything she had witnessed before. Every strike was a perfect balance of strength and precision. Every movement countered the commander's assault, turning defense into offense in an elegant, lethal dance. He was not a mere soldier. He was a force of nature, a whirlwind of motion, yet his eyes never left the goal: protect those who could not protect themselves. Hours passed, though it felt like moments. The human endured blows that would have crushed the strongest warriors, yet he rose each time, relentless, precise, unyielding. And when the final strike landed, it was not theatrical. It was simple, perfect, and devastating. The enemy commander fell, and the remaining forces fled in chaos. She ran to him as the battlefield stilled, her heart racing. He was bloodied, battered, yet standing tall, breathing heavily and alive. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to feel the full magnitude of what she had witnessed. One human, trusted for peace, had fought like a god and saved countless lives in the process. In the quiet that followed, she spoke, her voice trembling. "I trusted you. But I never imagined this what you did. It's beyond belief. He looked at her, a faint, exhausted smile forming on his face. It's not about belief, he said. It's about action. About doing what's right, even when the odds are impossible. That's what humans do. That's what I did. For peace, for life, for those who cannot fight for themselves. She realized then that her mission had transformed. She had married him for peace, yes. But in witnessing his courage, his humanity, and his extraordinary strength, she had come to understand something far greater. Humanity was not just resilient. It was capable of shaping the galaxy, of defying gods, machines, and fate itself. As they stood together on the battlefield, watching the last enemy forces retreat, she felt a surge of awe, gratitude, and a bond that went beyond words. She had trusted a human for peace, and in return, she had seen him wield the power of a god. And she knew that the story of this human, the one who had changed the course of the war, would be told for generations. Not just as a tale of power, but as a testament to the extraordinary courage, resilience, and humanity that could triumph against any odds, because sometimes, peace was not won through negotiation alone. It was won by those willing to fight like gods, yet remain human in heart and spirit. The battlefield had fallen silent. Fires still smoldered across shattered cities, and the scent of smoke and scorched metal lingered in the air. The enemy had retreated, their fleets shattered, their armies broken. For the first time in weeks, the galaxy seemed still. She stood beside him, her eyes tracing the devastation around them. Planets lay in ruin and countless lives had been lost, yet in the midst of destruction, she saw something extraordinary. Hope. Peace, fragile and precious, had been forged not through words, but through courage, resilience, and the power of one human who refused to surrender. He turned to her, exhausted, battered, and yet unbroken. His gaze held the calm determination she had come to know and trust, the same determination that had turned the tide of entire battles. "It's over," he said softly. "For now. The galaxy can breathe again." She nodded, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders, but she knew this peace was not just the absence of war. It was the result of every choice, every risk, every act of courage he had taken. She had trusted a human for peace, and in return, he had done far more than protect alliances or borders. He had inspired hope, ignited courage, and reminded the galaxy what it meant to be alive. The survivors of the war began to emerge, tending to the wounded, rebuilding what had been lost, and honoring those who had fallen. The human walked among them, not as a conqueror or a god, but as one of them, a warrior, yes, but also a protector, a friend, and a symbol of what humanity could achieve when driven by heart, courage, and will. In the quiet moments that followed, she finally allowed herself to speak the words she had kept inside. "I married you to secure peace," she said, her voice trembling. "But I've witnessed something far greater. You've shown me humanity is stronger, braver, and more extraordinary than I ever imagined." He looked at her, a faint smile playing across his bloodied face. "It wasn't just me," he said. "We all fought together. And humans, we fight not because we are perfect, but because we refuse to give up. That's what makes us strong. That's what makes peace possible." For the first time in weeks, they allowed themselves a moment of stillness. Stars shone above the ruined landscapes. Fleets drifted quietly in orbit, and the galaxy, for all its scars, could finally breathe. She reached for his hand, feeling the rough, battle-worn strength that had carried so many to safety. And in that touch, she felt not only trust, but connection, respect, and something that went far deeper than duty, a bond forged in war, in courage, and in the extraordinary nature of a human heart. As they looked across the horizon together, she realized the truth: peace was never guaranteed. It was fragile, hard-won, and fleeting, but it was worth everything, worth battles, worth sacrifices, worth trusting a human when the galaxy had long underestimated them. And so, in that quiet moment, she understood fully what she had witnessed. The human she had trusted for peace had wielded the power of a god, yet remained human in heart. He had changed the course of worlds, forged hope from chaos, and left a legacy that would echo through the stars for generations to come. The war was over. The galaxy was scarred but alive, and she who had trusted a human for peace had seen the impossible become reality. Because sometimes, the greatest power in the universe is not in weapons, or gods or armies, but in the courage, resilience, and humanity of a single soul willing to fight for what is right. The story had ended, but its echo would never fade.